The time for convening has arrived. We'll start this evening's series of meetings. I want to welcome everyone here. We'll start with our work session. Earlier this year, we had, the city manager and I had a meeting with a number of some professors at the university, at Georgia Tech. And we've had students working here looking at economic development and bringing some interesting studies to us. We had another one done on housing, on our housing situation. And I'll just tell you, the work we've gotten from these Georgia Tech students has been unbelievably high level and very enlightening, and a lot of good information, along with some policy suggestions that council may wish to consider going forward. With housing affordability and affordable housing being at the top of mind for an awful lot of folks in this community, we thought tonight would be a good opportunity for Mira Kaufman, who did the study on housing, to come and present her findings. Mira, before you come up and talk, you can make your way this way if you like. I was very impressed by the work that you did. It's as good as any of the consultant work that we've paid a lot of money for around this place. So thank you, and we'll turn the stage over to you and let you present your findings. That microphone down just a tad. There you go.
How about now?
Yeah, we need to get you a little bit of volume, but go ahead. They'll work on that.
Lovely. So thank you so much for having me. So I'll be presenting my home ownership assessment of Sandy Springs. As you mentioned, I'm not a consultant, so I'm using the data that's available to me and doing my best. And you can take certain things with a grain of salt, and I might point them out as we go along. So let me see. There we go. All right. So just quickly, the agenda for today is a little bit of how this project originated, where it comes from, and then I'll briefly go through the data that I used and how I kind of went through my analysis, and then I'll share some of the results that are in my paper, and then, I'll try and breeze through those, and if you want to look deeper into it, I'm going to link to my paper at the end. And then, of course, kind of tie it all together with some policy ideas that might be important in the future as you move into comp plans or city plans in the coming years. So just a quick project description. I wrote this paper as the applied research paper for my Master's of City and Regional Planning at Georgia Tech. So it includes sort of a quantitative analysis using the data that I'll explain in just a second, and then also some policy recommendations. I also was receiving my Master's of Public Policy, so I had to include those in there. And this all stemmed from a meeting with the mayor and city manager discussing some of the goals of Sandy Springs and wanting to have some more young home ownership, more young families, young professionals setting down roots in the city. So this report is really geared towards home ownership rather than rentership. I did look into that, and it's included in the report, but this presentation and the report does mainly focus on home ownership and how that can be achieved in the city. So quickly, the data that I was using. I did kind of an overall housing market data push to understand the state of housing using census data from the American Community Survey. And most of the data for this report, I just looked at 2018 and 2022 because 2022 was the most recent year that I could get data for free, and then just looking 5 years backwards. So that ACS data was looking at, ownership versus rentership, what are the median housing prices, what's the median household income, those kind of things to get a state of the city. And then the second data source I used was HMDA data, which is the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act. So that allows us to look into who's applying for mortgages in the city and who's originating those mortgages and who's getting denied. So just to give a little bit more insight into housing in the city. And again, that was for the years 2018 and 2022, looking at things like applicants' income, age, race, their price point, and things like that to sort of see if there's any patterns we can pick out. And using that HMDA data from the Mortgage Disclosure Act, I did run a quick regression. I don't want to dwell on this too much because it wasn't the greatest model, but in general, the regression was looking to see if the variables such as age, income, race group, property value had any relation to whether a mortgage was originated or denied. So in this case, if the city was looking to attract more younger buyers, if you were to see some sort of relationship between age and denials, that would not be a great thing. Spoiler alert, that's not necessarily what happened, but that was the sort of thing that I was checking for with the regression. So a couple of selected results from both of these data analyses, starting with the American Community Survey data. Just overall over this 5-year period between 2018 and 2022, just the smallest population decrease in the city. And from what the census numbers were showing here, that was because of a rise in owner-occupied units, but a large decrease in renter-occupied units. So home ownership was going up, rentership was going down, and the median owner-occupied home price also was going up, and in comparison to the greater Atlanta area, median price also went up at about the same rate. So it was just rising in tides with the rest of the city, or the greater area, I would say. Also, just a quick thing to point out, in 2022, 56% of renters with incomes between $50,000 to $75,000 were cost burdened in the city. And so, again, this report doesn't focus too much on rentership, but just showing that renting, it can be difficult to find affordable rents in the city potentially for some of those income ranges that a younger buyer might have. And then again, the last point, making the case that residents making over $150,000 annually, that share of the population grew in the city. So as you might expect, as there's more owner-occupied units, there's going to be wealthier residents in the city, and just something to consider. And then moving on to the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act data. This just shows quickly an overview of the year-to-year change. So in the dark green, you can see the originated mortgages. So you can see in between 2018 and 2022, there's a big jump, a lot more originated mortgages, more denials, but just a large growth in the number of mortgage originations that's happening. So that's important to think about when you see percentages in the report. Those numbers, they might be the same percentage, but it's actually a much larger number of people in 2022 as compared to 2018. So looking here, I was taking that mortgage loan data and seeing what age groups were applying each year. And so this is looking good for the city's goals. There's a lot of people in the 25 to 34 age range and 35 to 44 age range who are coming in. So if you're looking for young home buyers, they are applying for housing. And so that's a good thing if that's the goal. I did break down the denials as well by age group. So you can see here that the denials for people in the 25 to 34 age range did go up very slightly in 2022, but as I mentioned, there were so many more originations in that year. That might not necessarily be a bad thing. As well as the denials did go down for people in the 35 to 44 age group. So I know it's a lot of numbers, but they're all in the report if you want to look back at them. But generally, things looking good in the age group area for the goal of younger home ownership. I also looked by income group, so people who are making less than $200,000 a year, they were having slightly more denials, which makes sense as the median home price is rising. It's going to be difficult to, originate a loan if you're not making enough money for that property. But people making above that amount of money did not see an increase in denials. And I also looked at denials by race group, and this data can be a bit iffy and confusing because the way that they define the race groups is not super consistent. So this other category kind of catches a lot of things. But the thing you see here is that for the Asian race group, the denials went down. For Black or African American, they went up. And then also for the other category, they went up. But again, it's a little hard to understand what that means because of the way the data is structured. And then I also took a look at the median property value by age group. Again, to see if you want to attract younger home buyers, what kind of property is going to be affordable for those people. And so you can see here that the overall median home value in 2022 was around $650,000, but for home buyers in the 25 to 34 age range, it was significantly lower value that was the median property value that they were originating these mortgages for. So that's something to consider that, it kind of makes logical sense, but as you're trying to appeal to a younger group, you might have to have much more affordable homes compared to the median because of their, salaries and what they can afford and qualify for. So quickly, I'll go to this regression. There was not a significant correlation between applicant age and the mortgage loan decision using this model. The model wasn't super strong, so I would take everything that it says with a grain of salt. It did identify that applicants who are Black or African American were associated with lower rates of origination or higher denial rates. This is also a challenge of the data because there are many things that it's difficult to control for in the data because it doesn't provide credit score information or things like that. So some of these applicant age and race correlations that are shown in the model, it might be that if there was information about other factors of the applicant, it would kind of even out or be controlled for in the model. And then lastly, it did show that certain income groups were associated with a higher likelihood of origination. So all of those between 100 and about 400,000 were associated with an increase in the probability that the loan originated. So that's a good thing, but I won't dwell too much on it because the model wasn't super strong. So to kind of cap this out, I did have the chance to talk to a senior planner in Sandy Springs and discuss sort of policy ideas and the changes that the city has made to their zoning and land use recently. So that was a really interesting conversation and hearing about all the changes and, allowing cottage court, shared court, smaller townhome land plots and things like that. So I understand that the city is going through some changes to enable more sort of creative and unique ways of housing. So one of the policy ideas to look for in the future is to just extend that flexibility to a greater area of the city, which I know can be challenging because there are such beautiful neighborhoods that you want to preserve the character of. So a lot of strategic, thought has to go into which districts might be transitioned. But classically thinking of transitioning border areas of certain residential detached districts and maybe other certain zoning districts that could just have more flexibility in the sorts of developments that can go there, because those more flexible developments can be made at a lower price point that might be available to the age group or young families, first-time home buyers that you're trying to attract. Also, kind of going with the trends, those sorts of homes are great to have near commercial uses, transportation corridors, and train stations as well, to build on the need for that sort of housing is really in those areas. So expanding the coverage of the RT and RU districts in your land use as much as possible to just allow for the potential for these housing units. Also, a more creative thing to consider that is, it might only be able to be implemented in very specific areas, but just something to consider are conservation subdivisions, which shown here, it's where you take a swath of land and where you might usually spread your housing units all across the land and taking up all of that space. You conserve a certain area of that space for green space, waterways, to be held in perpetuity or for a long time as open space, and you concentrate some of your residences in a certain area. And so cottage court and shared court development patterns that have already become acceptable in the city could be used in those conservation subdivisions where those cottage court, let's say, might be densely put in one, or somewhat densely put in one area, and then a green swath could be left around those cottage court areas. And that green swath can kind of act as a buffering zone between maybe a residential detached area and a more densely packed cottage court area, and that could also protect a view shed if residents are concerned about the changing landscape of their neighborhood. And another interesting tidbit about this that there's examples of these in the report itself, some examples of conservation subdivisions that have done this in the past, and also some instances of use of form-based code to support a shared aesthetic between those smaller developments in contrast to the neighborhood that already exists, but by using certain architectural styles and a shared aesthetic, it can really enmesh and not disturb the look of the neighborhood. So this is my very silly graphic of what it could look like, but if you have this purple residential detached area with maybe some larger houses, and there's a natural woodlands or there's just green space to be left between them and an area where you might put a conservation subdivision, those members who are living in, or the residents living in the residential detached area, they're not really going to be able to see that cottage court area, and it kind of preserves that viewshed. So this is a very specific instance, but it's something that could be used. Again, following along with the things that I talked to the senior planning planner about are assessing the possibility of reducing minimum lot sizes in certain districts. I know that you guys have already reduced minimum lot sizes in certain areas, so just continuing to see where that fits in each neighborhood and really thinking long and hard about if there's places that can be transitioned in that way. And then there was a small discussion about tear downs of existing homes leading to McMansions or larger homes being built that really change the character of the neighborhood as well. And I know that you guys are working on expanding variances so that people do not have to tear down the home, and they might be able to, use those variances to expand their home further in different directions than they would have previously. So, encouraging the use of those variances rather than tear downs, and then also if it truly is a problem in certain areas and you really want to curb that sort of redevelopment, you can consider guidelines to create a maximum FAR discrepancy between the original structure and a new structure, and that could be chosen for specific neighborhoods if you feel like it's an issue in those neighborhoods, or in a wider area depending on your goals for the city. And of course, as a housing student, I have to plug some long-term affordability. So, this is not as much related to home ownership, but some of these programs are. It's important to develop that institutional capacity to leverage federal funding and other sorts of funding to create affordable rental units and owner-occupied units. So, the Home Investment Program, CHIP in Georgia, can provide opportunities to build affordable homes that can be owner-occupied or to renovate homes for affordability. And then, of course, expanding the opportunity for affordable rental units and opportunities for down payment assistance. That might require some more institutional capacity, but something to think about down the line when you're in these long-term planning efforts for sure. So I'm sorry if I took too long, but that's
No, you had a large report to cover in a very short time. I think you did a very good job. Thank you, Marilyn. Any questions? What kind of grade did you get on this? I hope an A.
I didn't even look. I graduated and I never looked back.
You got the sheepskin. That's all you cared about.
I think I got an A.
All right. Melissa.
So thank you so much for your work. Just a question. When you were going through and doing this, and based on your background in your graduate studies and personal, did you have any aha moments, like that something just you weren't aware of, or did all of this seem like it fell into place for you? Just curious.
I think that doing this study was a good exploration in some of the nitty-gritty details. Like, for instance, having that discussion with the senior planner about those variances, and that's how the city was trying to avoid these tear downs. And, sort of seeing, like, planners doing as much as they can do with the tools that they have, and sort of understanding, okay, yeah, so you can create more flexibility with variances. You can push that to an extent, but trying to understand how far is that going to get you and when is the appropriate time to sort of, come at the problem from a different way. Like, at some point, if the city decides, okay, we want to create a maximum FAR discrepancy between the two buildings, I guess throughout this process, I was thinking a lot about when cities have to make that sort of decision and how you can approach the problem from two different ways, but eventually you kind of have to, you choose a certain stance. So I think that was a learning moment for me.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Baumann.
Mira, thank you, and congratulations on graduating. I've just got a couple of questions for you, and you didn't focus on the renting, so I can cut out some of these. Have you formed, what is an appropriate definition of affordable home ownership in Sandy Springs for first-time home buyers? Is that something you formed an opinion on?
I guess, yeah, I did not form an opinion on that because it depends about the kinds of homeowners that you're trying to attract. And, affordability is a very conflict-inducing word, I would say. And so I think that the key for me was looking at those age ranges and seeing what was the median for them and kind of trying to create houses that would be affordable or available to a large range of people in that age. So let's say that for the age group of 25 to 34, I provided like a box plot in my report that shows you kind of from the 25th percentile to the 75th percentile, and you would hope that there would be a range of housing in that kind of box plot. I know it's a very technical answer, but you would hope that there would be a range within there to kind of cast a wide net of people.
And let me ask you this. Is it okay for a community that the definition of what is affordable in that community be different from the rest of a MSA area? I mean, I think I saw that our median home is way higher than the metro area. So, I mean, is it okay that how we define affordable and really start to develop policies around that would be different than a community maybe 30 miles outside of downtown Atlanta? Yeah,
well, that's a deep values question, I think, and I think that...
And by the way, I know you did a report, but I'm just asking if you have an opinion, if you want to give
Sure.
it, if you want to evade it, that's fine too.
Sure, no. Well, I mean, I will say that now I work for an affordable housing developer, so I believe that, everybody has a right to affordable housing, and there's a certain level that I think a city should try and cater to and provide that, not only for not only for optics or not only just to say that they're providing affordable housing, but for the sustainability of a city. You really do need people of different income ranges who are providing different services in the city. So I think it's quite important to provide a diverse array of housing products. And some of those are going to be much lower than what's probably currently available in Sandy Springs. So I think that is why this is sort of a crucial thing to look towards going forward, because as the city becomes wealthier or as the median house price gets higher and higher and it's unattainable for certain people to live there, that does change the demographics of the city, and it's not necessarily sustainable in the long term. So I would say that in the long term, it would be best to offer more options that are more affordable for people outside of the Sandy Springs area. However, realistically, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, and there's a balance between what the government can do and what the market can do. Couple more. This is the first time we're meeting, and I think you've met with a few people, not the council. Did you look at? And if you didn't look at it, we'll just move on. Did you look at the situation at the higher end? I mean, one could argue, and in fact it's been discussed here, that there's actually a squeeze on people, and forgive me, I'm just living in reality, looking for homes at $1 to $2 million that maybe not quite as young, but still professional families. Did you take a look at the data relating to high-end homes?
I did not, so sorry, but yeah.
And did you look at anything relating to, because Sandy Springs has, I think your data showed an older population, people that have been living in their homes for quite a long time. Did we look at anything, or did you form an opinion as it related to folks that want to sell their home but stay in Sandy Springs and find better age-in-place opportunities that maybe don't qualify under the same category as a young family that you've been tasked with on the up, maybe families trying to trade down but stay in Sandy Springs? Did you look at that?
I didn't look too much into that, I will say, but I think that I did speak to the planner about the opportunities for affordable senior rentership, but home ownership I did not really get into.
And just a couple more. Did you look at anything, the impact of short-term rental Airbnb, investor, hedge fund, and how that has impacted, because I think there's a sense that typically the hedge funds and the Airbnbs aren't buying the $1.5 million homes, maybe in some cases, but they're buying that more affordable category of homes, and this is not just to Sandy Springs. Have you either looked at that for this study or in your other work and the impact and what policies we can do around those questions?
Yeah, I have looked at that, not for this report, but for other studies during my graduate degree, and that's a serious issue. I think that there's quite a lot of investment properties all across the metro area at a higher rate than in other cities in America even. So that's a good issue. I would love to get back to you with policies for that, because I'm not prepared to say anything.
Well, let me ask you this. Would that be something that you would think the city should be looking at? I guess this will be I've got my final question. I'm going to merge it into the other one. Is what questions would you have us ask that might be outside the scope of this nice grad school report that you've done, to live in the reality of the issues that we're dealing with that include very substantially young first-time home buyers? But what are the questions that maybe we might want to consider? And if you want to come back to us, come back to me or come back to us, because it starts with the questions that we're asking, and then what is your opinion of the level of urgency? And I think, to follow up on Councilwoman Millar's question about aha moments, did you form an opinion as to the level of urgency in addressing the concerns? Is this something the city of Sandy Springs, as a result of your studies, needs to be looking at in the near term, or can it put it off to sort of longer term strategic visioning? So questions you would ask, and what is the urgency? Thank you, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Those are great questions. The questions that I would ask, one, I think it's pretty striking, the loss of renters and the speed at which homeownership grew, at that kind of change over the past 5 years. So I think it's good to question what's going on there and what are the trends that are causing the lack of rentership, and if that's something that the city can support in the long term, and how to get those rents down, because I wasn't really looking too much at rents in this report, but the rents here appeared quite high in comparison to other places, and then that also went along with this trend down in rentership. So I think that's an important question that I would be curious to learn about. I would also be curious, I didn't get to look into the rate of investor-owned properties here in the city, and I would be curious to the amount of that's going on, because I know that is a pressing issue in a lot of communities in Atlanta. I wouldn't have thought about it being a pressing issue here. So I would really, before diving deep into that question, I would look at the quantity and see if it's really a large percentage of the home stock here. And then as far as pressing issues, I think that I would say that, to me, the rentership, the rents and the amount of cost burden here is a very urgent issue in my eyes, and the home ownership issue is something that it is the development patterns that you'll need to sustain younger home ownership take a long time to put in place. I mean, some of that development can take a while to go through, and by changing, land use and zoning, you're creating that flexibility, but then developers have to understand that, come in, build their development. So since that is such a long-term process, for me, I would believe that these changes are, somewhat urgent because of the long-term nature of building that kind of housing stock.
Anybody else? Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So 2 things. One, congratulations on getting a job. It's always good when you get out of school to have a job.
Right.
One of the things you talked about was this, and I forget the exact term, conservation developments?
Conservation subdivisions?
Conservation subdivisions. Do you have examples of where someone's already done that?
Yes, so there are a couple examples in my report.
Okay.
The most common example that's cited in the Atlanta area is a very different case than here, because that was in Eastlake and the Eastlake Commons.
Sure.
But that is a local example that can be helpful. And there they were able to kind of build townhomes that were then surrounded by a preserved green swath with gardens and all sorts of community amenities. So community amenities aren't necessarily a part of conservation subdivisions everywhere, but in that case they were. And in that area, they were able to provide affordable houses, and they were kind of more densely clustered and townhomes, so, a more moderate size, offering like that sort of gentle density, but then also still preserving a really nice like residential feel because of the green space. So that's one example, and there's I believe a couple other in my report, and if there's not, you can contact me and I can send you a few.
All right, that's good. Thank you very much.
Dr. Kelly.
Great. Thank you for your report. It's a great start, I think. The sense I have is that we're going to have to take a slightly deeper and more comprehensive dive into this. One of the question that sort of I have throughout reading the paper and listening to your presentation is, who are the proper stakeholders to engage around solutions, particularly if we want to be innovative and creative about it. How do we leverage other assets that the city has, which is our thriving business community and other things to kind of achieve, to address some of these things. And I'd like to see us, the next level of this, sort of begin to address those questions. But I have a few questions for you. The term family versus non-family that you use, can you just define those for me in the paper?
If you
Table 1, I think it is. Let me check it real quick.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I think it's Table 1. I actually thought was pretty interesting. It's on page 10, and you did this breakdown. Yeah, owner occupied versus renter occupied households, and then you did family versus non-family.
Oh, yes.
Compared 2018 to 2022, and then you did the percent, the rate of change.
Okay.
in those.
Yes. Thank you. So, that comes from I believe that comes from the American Community Survey. That is a breakdown that they do that explains sort of the number of residents living there. And sometimes I believe for that table, if it's saying family, it even goes to the level of asking respondents if it's like a mother and child or a couple.
Right. See, that's what I was getting at. So family means children?
I don't think that it necessarily has to mean children, because it can be, it's like I would have to look at the census definition of that table.
Okay. I'm curious.
Sorry.
So where could I find that definition?
So there should be a table within the report that tells you which census table all of the charts come from. And so within that census table, it will tell you. And again, you can contact me and I can probably find that for you very quickly.
Okay.
Because I do apologize when you're finishing up your grad degree, there might be some loose ends.
I'm aware.
Yeah.
So I will chime in.
Yeah.
I just Googled it, so we all get the answer
thank you.
live.
All right, go ahead.
The ACS defines a family household as a group of people living in a housing unit who are related by birth, marriage, or adoption.
Okay.
Non-family household is a group of people living in a household unit who are not related.
Okay, so then non-family would be single or roommates, that kind of situation.
Yes, okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's interesting. I have to look at the data now. Speaking of data, my question to you, and it's somewhat similar to what Councilman Bauman asked. If you did, let's just say you did have like a budget, where are some other places you would have pulled data? I know you were somewhat limited, but where are some spots we can look to make this a little more robust if we wanted to go there?
Yeah,
I think to put some resources toward it.
I believe I was kind of relying on the HRNA housing study that was done previously, and I'm looking at some of the data that they have. And I think the main source that is really I felt would hold me back is having access to CoStar data, which tells you more about who owns different places. And so then you can start to look into investor-owned properties and different factors about the owners of property specifically. That is really helpful. And so I think that tends to be the consultant edge, is having access to those kind of databases.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm done, Mayor.
Let me ask you this. I mean, when you talk about affordable housing and housing affordability, they sometimes become interchangeable, and they're not always interchangeable. What are the barriers that you discovered in your research to creating houses that are affordable to a wide range of potential owners in Sandy Springs?
Yeah, so I think that my main focus is on those lot sizes and on sort of the current level of rigidity that's in the code. I mean, there are other ways to approach it, so I think that another barrier is a lack of programs that can be used to support affordable homeownership. So if there is the opportunity to, provide down payment assistance, use federal funds to create affordable homeownership opportunities, that's great, and that's one avenue that is currently not open and sort of presents a barrier. But I think that on a larger scale, as the city grows, the land uses will have to adapt slightly to just allow for more affordable development, because with the current state, just in order for a development to be profitable, it's impossible for most of the housing developments here to be affordable for the target range.
And I assume the size of the lot is related to the cost of the land here
Yes.
in this area. So to make that, what about labor and material costs? Did you take a look at any of those factors?
So, yeah, I didn't really get into that too much, but I mean, I do know that current times it's bad. Labor and material costs are high, and that is another major challenge. So that's a timing issue, and I'm not qualified to say if that will improve in the future.
No, nobody expects you to be also a labor expert. So, okay. All right. Anybody else? Thank you for the work and the effort, and then coming here and then being cross-examined by this body. You handled yourself extremely well, and good luck in your career. And if you ever want to come work for a city, go see that lady over there. All right. Thanks, Mira.
Thank you so much.
All right. Are there any other items that council wishes to discuss in the work session? Hearing none, we'll move to regular order. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sandy Springs City Council to order for Tuesday, July 16th, 2024. Will the city clerk make the announcements and call the roll?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices at this time. Individuals who would like to provide public comment at a city council meeting are required to complete and submit a public comment card in advance of the meetings. Those public comment cards are available online at the chamber entrance. Those providing public comment may be allotted up to 3 minutes to speak on their single chosen topic. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Rusty Paul.
Present.
Councilmember John Paulson. Councilmember Melody Kelly. Councilmember Melissa Mueller.
Present.
Councilmember Jody Rochelle. Councilmember Tibby DeGiulio. Councilmember Andy Bauman.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment cards?
Yes, we've received one public comment card this evening from Mr. Bill Griffith.
Mr. Griffith, welcome back. You become a regular. You're going to take your 3 minutes, even if it takes weeks to do it, right?
I lost 10 seconds. Mr. Mayor and council members, assuming the recently approved budgets for the fiscal year 25 actually okays the spending of almost $10 million of the $16.5 million Roberts Drive side path proposal, I want to present this as a motion for reconsideration of that matter. Since that $10 million is less than 1% of the $1.1 billion budgets for this fiscal year, I'm concerned that some important facts regarding that side path may have been overlooked. I want to call your attention to some of those facts, hoping they will prompt you to reconsider your approval of that spending. The first objective listed in the Roberts Drive side path scoping study is to, quote, increase access to CRNRA, end quote, i.e. the park. I want to talk about increased access to that park. Currently, other than a required entrance pass, there is nothing that restricts access to the park from Roberts Drive during operating hours. There are bike-friendly laws. There are multiple sharrows painted on Roberts Drive, and there are sidewalks on most of Roberts Drive, all of which facilitate such access. Filling in those sidewalk gaps with 5-foot wide sidewalks is all that's needed. Furthermore, access to the park from North Ridge and vice versa is restricted. However, page 15 of the Trail Master Plan shows a planned trail through the park that will connect the northern part of Roberts Drive to North Ridge via the park. Per my conversation of yesterday with a supervisor at the park, that proposal has not even been presented to or approved by the Park Service. At this point, the plan to connect the northern part of Roberts Drive to North Ridge via the park seems like wishful thinking. The third objective listed in that scoping study is to, quote, provide safe walking and bike routes, end quote. I also want to talk about that. As for safety in the park, there are no sidewalks there. Why spend millions of dollars for a side path to access a park that does not have sidewalks? That's inconsistent with the safe routes objective. Even if a pass-through is approved someday by the Park Service, it's easy to believe no modifications of the existing road or the adjacent shoulder will be approved, and if not, users will not have access to the safety of a sidewalk along that road. As for safety on Roberts Drive, I discussed that 4 weeks ago. However, since less than 1% of this year's budget is for Roberts Drive side path, those comments may have been too late to influence your vote on the budget, but they may help support this motion. It seems to me that the approval to spend millions of dollars on that side path is worthy of reconsideration.
Right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Any others?
No.
All right, we'll close the public comment period. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. DiGiulio.
I move approval of the meeting agenda for Tuesday, July 16th, 2024.
Mr. DiGiulio moves approval of the meeting agenda. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve the meeting agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on approval of the meeting agenda. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The meeting agenda is approved. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor Paul,
Ms. Rochelle.
I move that we approve the consent agenda for Tuesday, July 16th.
We have a motion by Ms. Rochelle to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on approval of the consent agenda. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The consent agenda is approved. Moving to the, let me get my right page here. All right, moving to public hearings. Will the clerk please read the first item?
This is agenda item number 2024-173, consideration of a resolution to approve a Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate for River Corridor Review, RC 2402SS, for property located at 5080 Riverview Road, presented by Planning and Zoning Manager Michelle McIntosh Ross.
Ms. McIntosh Ross.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. For your consideration is the approval of a resolution to authorize the Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate for the property located in the Chattahoochee River Corridor area at 5080 Riverview Road. It's a 1.87-acre single-family lot. It's in Council District 6. The applicant is proposing to construct a retaining wall, steps, and associated improvements in their rear yard. The Atlanta Regional Commission has reviewed this application and found that the project is consistent with the Chattahoochee River Corridor Plan. Given this determination, it is staff's recommendation to the Mayor and City Council to approve this resolution to authorize a Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate for the property located at 5080 Riverview Road.
All right, thank you. Are there any public comments?
No.
All right, we'll close the public hearing. You've heard the report of the planning and zoning manager. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul,
Mr. Baumann.
I move adoption of agenda item 2024-173, approval of the Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate for 5080 Riverview Road.
We have a motion by Mr. Baumann. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2024-173, a Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate for river corridor review at 5080 Riverview Road. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2024-173, approving the Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate for 5080 Riverview Road. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-174. This is ABL number 109752. Consideration of approval of an alcoholic beverage license application for Trader Joe's East, Inc., doing business as Trader Joe's, number 799, at 4600 Roswell Road, Building A, Suite 100, Sandy Springs, Georgia 30342. The applicant is Reginald Jones for retail package wine and malt beverage, tasting for wine and malt beverage. This is presented by Chief Financial Officer Tony Carlisle.
Ms. Carlisle.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a new application for retail packaging, tasting of wine and malt beverages, Trader Joe's East, Inc., DBA Trader Joe's, number 799, 4600 Roswell Road, Building A, Suite 100, Sandy Springs, Georgia, 30342. The applicant, Reginald J. Jones, has met all requirements, and staff recommends approval.
Have we received any public comment cards? I'll close the public hearing. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul,
Mr. Baumann.
District 6 night. I move adoption of agenda 2024-174, alcoholic beverage license for Trader Joe's at 4600 Roswell Road.
We have a motion by Mr. Baumann. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve agenda item 2024-174, the alcoholic beverage license application for Trader Joe's East at 4600 Roswell Road. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
Tony, did they give you any, through the application, do we have any indication of when they expect to be open?
I can look right quick and see.
That's really the key question on southern residents. I heard August. I don't know. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, I'm not as familiar with the packet, the application.
Well, if you find it, let us know later.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-174, the alcoholic beverage license application approval for Trader Joe's East at 4600 Roswell Road. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please call the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-175. This is ABL number 109654. Consideration of approval of an alcoholic beverage license application for Shop Q LLC, doing business as Shop Q LLC, at 156 Northwood Drive, Suite A, Sandy Springs, Georgia 30342. The applicant is Mahindi Kadidaya for retail package wine and malt beverage, presented by Chief Financial Officer Tony Carlisle.
Ms. Carlisle.
Okay, this is a change of ownership for retail package of wine and malt beverages, Shop Q LLC, 156 Northwood Drive, Suite A, Sandy Springs, Georgia 30342. The applicant, Mahindi Kodidaya, has met all requirements and staff recommends approval.
Any public comment cards? All right, we'll close the public hearing. You've heard the report of the Chief Financial Officer. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
I move adoption of agenda item 2024-175, request for the approval of alcoholic beverage license for Shop Q LLC at 156 Northwood Drive, Suite A.
Have a motion by Mr. Baumann. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve agenda item 2024-175, the alcoholic beverage license application for Shop Q at 156 Northwood. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
Dan, can I ask you a question? I didn't give you a heads up, but I think it won't be that difficult. When we're told that all requirements have been met. Maybe start with Tony. When we're told all requirements have been met, what does that mean?
So we have a extensive checklist that we generate for each of the customers who are applying, and it means that we've received a copy of their license, their application, they paid everything, we have a copy of their lease, it's been approved, food permit if food is associated with it, fire department letter.
And what does that fire department letter say? Typically, what is it to confirm compliance with fire codes? Yes, yes. Okay. A fire department letter and community development confirmation of zoning.
Zoning letter, survey, police department confirms the GCIC registered agent is clear, code enforcement letter. Then we have the public hearing and final.
And what is the code enforcement letter?
They have no outstanding violation.
Does anybody? So does the code enforcement letter for this property say that there are no outstanding violations?
There are no outstanding violations.
Right. There wouldn't be to get to this state.
I'm sorry?
There wouldn't be in order to get to the public hearing.
So to get to the public hearing, there would be no.
Everything would have to be clear.
Okay. Okay, and what is the standard operating procedure? That is to not go do an inspection, but that's to look on the file and see if there are, in fact, to see if there are no outstanding, unsatisfied code enforcement violations. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And just to maybe help you with this, if the council wants a different standard, then you're going to have to change the ordinance. I'll give you the great example. The Trader Joe's you just approved, they don't have a CO yet.
Right.
So it doesn't meet the same rules that we would have to apply to this applicant.
And that's not, and I'm not looking to it. And sometimes we do conditional pending those matters. Is that right? I mean, we frequently will do a conditional pending the opening or temporary.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm not sure. Well, and I don't really mean to pick on this group, but the question, I guess, that is a policy question as to where does state law give us that flexibility as it relates to the standards, as it relates to, for example, code violations? Does that have to be updated? Criminal activity on a property, and not to suggest anything with this property as it relates to that.
I think just as the CFO was mentioning to you that this is a pretty rigorous review that goes on. And to get to this stage, they have to meet all those standards that the law would allow us to apply. And I've mentioned this to you before. I've mentioned it to other jurisdictions, that once it goes through that review and gets here, the limitations on when you can deny it and when you can't are very, very, very limited.
So
up to and including, like, if Trader Joe's gets one and they didn't have a certificate of occupancy, it's much different than not giving it to another one because they had a couple holes in the building.
Right. No, I think that's
that
fair.
wouldn't be in the purview.
Yeah, that would be a fair question. So, and the time for a policy discussion is probably not in the middle of a pending application that has been reported to have met is being reported, not purported, being reported to have met and thus I made the motion to approve it. So,
right. But I think it's a great time to talk about, if you want to up the standards, to use this as an example. If the council wanted to do that, I think it's a great time to do that. I don't think that there's evidence before the body that would authorize you to not grant.
Right. So that would be my request, but not during this application. It would be at a separate. Well, first of all, I don't know what the rest of the council feels like, but it would be at a separate time, independent of a particular application that has been reported to have met as this one has met the checklist and the standards that we've established. Thanks, Mayor.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-175, the approval of the alcoholic beverage license application for Shop Q at 156 Northwood Drive. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-176. This is ABL number 109492. Request for Mayor and City Council consideration of approval of an alcoholic beverage license application for Legacy Management Investment Group LLC, doing business as Rays on the River, at 6700 Powers Ferry Road, Sandy Springs, Georgia, 30339. The applicant is Daniel Spencer Groom for consumption on the premises, wine, malt beverages, and distilled spirits, presented by Chief Financial Officer Tony Carlisle.
Ms. Carlisle.
This is a change of ownership application for retail, package, and consumption on the premises of wine and malt beverages and distilled spirits, Legacy Management and Investment Group, LLC. DBA Rays on the River, 6700 Powers Ferry Road, Sandy Springs, Georgia, 30339. The applicant, Daniel Spencer Groom, has met all requirements and staff recommends approval.
All right. Have we received any public comment cards? All right, we'll close the public comment period. You've heard the report of the Chief Financial Officer. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
Move adoption of agenda item 2024-176, request for alcoholic beverage license for Legacy Management Investment Group, LLC, for Rays on the River at 6700 Powers Ferry Road.
Motion by Mr. Baumann. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve agenda item 2024-176, the alcoholic beverage license application for Rays on the River at 6700 Powers Ferry Road. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
So I want to mention, he's not watching, he's not here, but Ray Schoenbaum has been a legend in the Atlanta and Sandy Springs area for generations, with Rays on the River, with Rio Bravo, then Rays Rio Bravo, and all of the restaurants and all of the people that he's employed, all of the citizens he has served meals, and I want to put it on the record that, and maybe at some point we can honor him in some other way, but he has really been a stalwart of local business and just a tremendous restaurateur. I've known Ray since my early law practice days, and I just, for one, really, really appreciate the work he's done and wish him nothing but the best, he and his family, as they've now sold this restaurant, and he's moving on to a very well-deserved retirement.
Yeah, he is the originator of fine dining in Sandy Springs and has maintained it for a long time in an iconic location. And I second what you say. He's that family has been in the restaurant business for a long time, been very successful, and Ray has taken his family's legacy and brought a real iconic place to Sandy Springs, and we couldn't be more grateful for that. So I wholeheartedly second what you say. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-176, approval of the alcoholic beverage license application for Legacy Management Investment Group, Rays on the River, 6700 Powers Ferry Road. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-177. This is ABL number 109540. Consideration of approval of an alcoholic beverage license application for Zanzibar Cuisine and Lounge, LLC, doing business as Zanzibar Cuisine and Shisha Lounge at 350 North Ridge Road, Sandy Springs, Georgia, 30350. The applicant is Olayinka Odetam for consumption on the premises of wine, malt beverages, and distilled spirits, presented by Chief Financial Officer Tony Carlisle.
Ms. Carlisle.
This is a new application for consumption on the premises of wine and malt beverages and distilled spirits. Zanzibar Cuisine and Lounge, LLC, DBA Zanzibar Cuisine and Shisha Lounge, 350 North Ridge Road, Sandy Springs, Georgia, 30350. The applicant has met all requirements and staff recommends approval.
Have we received any public comment cards? All right, we'll close the public hearing. You've heard the report of the Chief Financial Officer. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
District 1's represented tonight on the agenda, both ends of the council spectrum here. I move approval of agenda item 2024-177, ABL 109540, approval of alcoholic beverage license application for Zanzibar Cuisine and Lounge, doing business as Zanzibar Cuisine and Shisha Lounge at 350 North Ridge Road. Applicants Olayinka Oyedotum for consumption, wine, beverages, and spirits.
We have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we approve agenda item 2024-177, the alcoholic beverage license application for Zanzibar Cuisine and Lounge at 350 Northridge Road. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2024-177, the alcoholic beverage license application for Zanzibar Cuisine and Lounge at 350 Northbridge Road. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will move to new business. Will the clerk please read the first item?
If I could answer the question on Trader Joe's, they plan to open 11/1/2024.
Agenda item number 2024-178. This is consideration of a resolution to approve a facility use agreement between the City of Sandy Springs and Sandy Springs Youth Sport, Inc. for the operation and management of Morgan Falls Athletic Complex and the implementation of youth recreation programs, and to authorize the city manager to execute the contract presented by Director of Recreation and Parks, Brent Walker.
Mr. Walker.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you all know, Sandy Springs Youth Sports has provided quality youth programs at Morgan Falls Athletic Complex since 2008. The city appreciates all the work that goes into providing baseball, softball, cheer, and football programs to our young residents and values the partnerships we have with them for the past 16 years. To continue this partnership, we've drafted a facility usage agreement that is nearly identical to the agreement of the past 5 years, but with a couple of notable exceptions. The annual contract value has been increased from $150,000 per year to $160,000 for the first year, with a 5% increase for each subsequent year to account for increases to cost and maintenance and upkeep of the park. Also included is a $25,000 per year scholarship fund to help offset program costs for some participants. The term of the 2024 agreement is for one initial year and has 4 optional renewal years, contingent upon City Council's annual appropriation of funds. Mayor and Council approved the budget for this initial year of this contract in the 2024 budget. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and also Colin Wheat and some of the board members are here also from Sandy Springs Youth Sports.
All right, you've heard the report of the Director of Recreation and Parks. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul?
Dr. Kelly.
I move approval of agenda item 2024-178, facility use agreement between the City of Sandy Springs and Sandy Springs Youth Sports for the operation and management of Morgan Falls Athletic Complex and the implementation of youth recreation programs, and to authorize the city manager to execute the agreement.
We have a motion by Dr. Kelly. Is there a second? Second. Moved by Dr. Kelly, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve agenda item 2024-178, the facility use agreement between the City of Sandy Springs and Sandy Springs Youth Sports for the operation and management of Morgan Falls Athletic Complex. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Dr. Kelly.
The capital improvements that are, I guess, sort of ongoing, what's the current status of that? Can you speak to it?
Sure. So currently we have one of our engineering firms on call doing a hydrology study of the park for future development, for potential of artificial turf, stormwater for sidewalk, curb and gutter, all those types of things. They've completed that hydrology study and now are working on stormwater management systems throughout the park. They're about 75% done with those plans. Once that plan set is done, we'll bid it out and start that work in the park. We also have funding available to demolish the old administrative building over there in preparation for building the new batting facility that will be in a future phase. So things are kind of in planning right now, but we hope to have a bid out this year for some of the work to be done.
Okay, so that is funded, what you just mentioned about
Yes,
the building? Okay. Does this, what we're approving today for operation and management, does it also help support them in offering scholarships, or is that different? Okay.
So that's new for this contract for this term. In the past, we just funded $150,000 for upkeep of the park, and they applied separately through our nonprofit arts and recreation grant. However, because they are such a close partner with the city and honestly are an arm of our department in providing those programs, we felt that it was appropriate to just provide that through their contract or their usage agreement. So they'll get two disbursements per year of $12,500 per year to be able to utilize to help provide those scholarships for programming.
and maybe someone from the board would be willing to speak to about how many young people that could cover approximately. I suppose it depends, but Colin, you want to?
Yes.
Okay.
Could you come to the microphone, please?
Thank you for having us here. The answer on how many young people actually depends on how many different sports they actually play. But on an average, that's going to be able to support about 50 kids per year. And again, realize that that's if they only play in one sport. So let's just say many of our athletes are playing, let's say, baseball and football or cheer and softball. So I think it's a fair assessment to say probably while 50 is the ideal number, it's probably going to be more like 35 to 40.
How many scholarship students do you typically have?
I can tell you this is a record year for us right now.
Mm-hmm.
It has grown over the past 5 years from as many as 10 to today we're seeing 20 to 25. And I think that number is going to unfortunately continue to increase.
Of scholarships?
Of scholarships, yeah.
Okay.
Everybody gets approved, and I say that to a certain level. We have a very stringent process, but we want to make sure every athlete has the opportunity to play sports.
Okay. Do we have like a caveat where students we support have to be Sandy Springs residents? Right?
They do.
Or they do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, 100%.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
No problem.
All right. I'm done.
Okay, Mr. Paulson.
Thank you. So, Colin, while you're here, because it looks like this is now going to become part of the standard annual contract, I would still like to see in your annual report to the city regarding the park's operations, would you please delineate this and talk in more detail about how many students, et cetera, so we have more information on this?
Yeah, 100%. We've done that previously, and we'll continue to do
as
that.
part of the grant program.
Yes.
But this is treated separately, but I want to make sure it doesn't get lost in the
100%.
in the paperwork shuffle. All right, thank you.
Mr. DiGiulio.
One of the things that we talked about on the onset of the city was that no child in Sandy Springs should have to not be able to play in any of these things because of money. Do you have any idea of how many students we've turned away because we didn't have scholarship funds for them? Or, I notice you have a 5% inflation hedge in the operating funds. Do we have one also in the scholarship funds?
We have not done the scholarship funds, no, but I would tell you, to date, we've never turned one person away.
We've never turned anybody away.
And I think it's important to say, for many years, we funded it ourselves. It was self-funded by the park itself, by the members. Okay. And what I think this has allowed us to do is see the support from the city and allow these kids to play. And by the way, take the stress away. We also have a plethora of equipment that these kids are able to use too, and they're not having to pay for that equipment now.
Okay. And Brent, do we have scholarships at all of our recreation facilities, and do we have scholarship funds and programs so that no child in Sandy Springs has to be denied recreation?
So we have the nonprofit arts and recreation grant that we funded again for this year of $150,000 that different nonprofits around Sandy Springs, not necessarily just the ones with usage agreements with us, but really any nonprofit that qualifies, they can apply for that fund, which Sandy Springs Youth Sports has done in the past.
Right.
So now by facilitating that fund through this agreement, that frees up the $25,000 that they could apply for in this coming year and probably would receive. Now that's available to other nonprofits.
And things like Hammond Park and other recreation facilities all have the same type of scholarship available.
They have through the nonprofit arts and recreation grant. Yes,
Great.
sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Shell.
Colin, I just want to thank you for everything that you and everybody else does for the kids in Sandy Springs. Y'all put your heart and soul into it. My kids played there, and it's a great facility, and you make it even better. And you'll let us know if there's anything else that you need, I hope.
Absolutely, and thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Baumann.
So, Colin, I echo that. I know you also, it's not enough that you coach your own kids, manage a full-time job, but running that program takes so much to do it and so much love and dedication. It's the very best that the community has to offer. And I think I want to kind of focus a little bit on this money for the scholarship. This should not be seen as a cap, but rather a start. And in the past, so we understand what's happened, is that it was all of the family participants. I mean, the budget is the budget, but that was paid for by the families that are there and had to come out of the budget. And costs have gone up so much that made it even tighter. I think this message is that you can, and there's capacity at the park for participants. We all know that. That this really allows you comfortably to actively solicit and partner for underserved youth to participate in the programs. And if we cap out, you'll come back and I'm sure call any one of us and we'll look at it. And to Brent, I've sat here for almost 11 years now and listened to the founding Councilman DeGiulio next to me say this thing every year, that a student or a child who wants to participate in our programs, but for the cost where they really have the demonstrated need, should be able to do that across our programs. And I think I'll help you out a little bit, is that it's done in different ways with different programs, whether it's tennis or the gymnastics and others. But I think what we're hearing loud and clear is with our direct partner program arms like this is, it's a little different than the other that was conceived out of COVID and the relief efforts that were needed, that we need to continue to purposefully look for all of the opportunities to make sure that we haven't left any stone unturned and any child left behind, because that really does represent the very best values of the city in these programs. And so let's continue to look for those opportunities. And there's no one way to do it. But this seems, and we had spoken with Colin and his team, that this is a really good way to do that. And I fully expect those numbers, maybe sadly, maybe happily, whatever, but the numbers to go up because there is capacity at the program, and the program itself needs those resources to deliver to all of the participants, those that are full paying market rate and those that are from underserved communities. So I think this is a great start, and I look forward to, like Councilman Paulson said, getting the report.
Well, it's been a joy of mine and others on this body to be there during opening day and closing day. And one of the things that has impressed me over the last several years is how much the program has grown. The number of kids that are participating. 5 years ago, you were concerned about, they were going to other facilities because of the facilities weren't the best on the planet. Now I think this body has spent a lot of time and energy and resources to bring those facilities up to standard, and with the help and the cooperation of the whole team of Sandy Springs Youth Sports, I think we have not only a phenomenal set of fields and athletic complex for the kids to play on, but it's really brought in a lot of new people, new players, new athletes coming in. And I want to thank you guys for being able to do that and grow this program to the point that I was really astonished this year by the increase in the number of kids that we got out there. It takes a lot of volunteer time to be able to do what you do, and I just want you to know that does not go unnoticed and does not go unappreciated. So thank you. You and I have had a lot of conversations, and I just appreciate all the volunteers and the parents and everybody who the money's important, but we couldn't run it without the people that are volunteering and doing it. And that's one of the hallmarks of Sandy Springs has been our volunteerism, and you epitomize that, so thank you. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, let's give them the money then. The question is on agenda item 2024-178. Approve a facility use agreement with the City of Sandy Springs and Sandy Springs Youth Sports. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-179, consideration of a resolution to authorize the lease of 10 new cardiac defibrillators monitors for the City of Sandy Springs Fire Department and authorizing the city manager to execute the documents to effectuate the same. Presented by Fire Chief Keith Sanders.
Chief Sanders.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you is a request to approve a resolution authorizing the lease of from Stryker Sales LLC 10 cardiac monitors. These monitors will total of $643,018.60 in total over 6 years. Requesting that you authorize the city manager to execute all the documents required to effectuate the acquisition of these monitors. They will be replacing current monitors, LifePak 15s that are on our apparatus currently. This lease program also includes a service maintenance contract, and we did look at several options, but we highly recommend this option here. It really gives us the best return on our investment, and being able to exchange these when the lease is out over. The technology is ever changing. These are brand new monitors. It gives us better connectivity to the hospitals, give real timing and cardiac information of patients to the ER physicians when the paramedics need to have that communication. And it's really amazing to see how they've evolved. And we're asking you to approve this, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, you've heard the report of the fire chief. What's the desire of council? Mr. DiGiulio.
Turn that on, thank you. I move approval of item 2024-179, consideration for resolution to authorize the lease of 10 new cardiac defibrillator monitors for the City of Sandy Springs Fire Department, and authorize the city manager to execute documents to effectuate the same.
We have a motion by Mr. DiGiulio. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2024-179, authorizing the lease of 10 new cardiac defibrillators and monitors for the City of Sandy Springs Fire Department. Any discussion? Mr. DiGiulio.
Chief, is there a big upgrade in the technology in the ones we're using now and these new ones?
It's amazing to see the difference in them, the advancement. Yes, sir.
Well, amaze me. Tell me.
Well, it gives they're more user friendly. They're less. They're very much more compact for the medics getting on the scene. All the information is connected to our software. It downloads automatically for the medics all the information, all the cardiac data information about that patient, as well as what the rhythms were for that patient. And there's also a training module for the medics when they are in the training sessions that was not available at one time, in the past monitors. I'd be more than happy to set that up where you guys could, once we get them, come in and see the demo of the difference between them. I think it'd be something that you'd find quite remarkable.
Are these going to be on each of our trucks plus one on the new vehicle that we're getting?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Rochelle.
How long it says 6 years, is that about the life expectancy of these?
It is. The ones we have right now have been much longer. We've been waiting on this new technology to come out, and it's changing so quickly. It's 6 years, then we'll need to go to the next advancement in the technology.
Okay, I would love to see one.
Okay, I'll get with Patrick and we'll arrange something for you.
Mr. Paulson.
So, Chief, what happens to the old ones? Do we return those
We're exchanging them in for.
So they're leased as well.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2024-179, a resolution authorizing the lease of 10 new cardiac defibrillator monitors for the City of Sandy Springs Fire Department. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-180, consideration to approve a contract award to BCC Engineering LLC, doing business as Heath and Lineback Engineers, Inc., for concept design services for the Roswell Road North End Boulevard project, and to authorize the city manager to execute the contract, presented by Public Works Director Marty Martin.
Mr. Martin, we're delighted to see you here tonight.
Glad
I know
to be
you've had a challenging period, and our condolences and thoughts go with you and your family through a very difficult period, but we're glad you're back here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Tonight, Mayor and Council, I bring before you an award recommendation to BCC Engineering, doing business as we all know them, Heath and Lineback Engineers, for the design of the Roswell Road North End Boulevard project, and request authorization for the city manager to execute a contract. Due to the expected duration of this project as well as its complexity, staff recommends that currently we award concept design services only, as we further develop the project through this concept design development phase and then pursue additional design services as warranted. A little bit of staff recommends that this award for the initial concept design services phase be awarded at a contract value of $1,149,303.13. A little background. I think you know of the Roswell Road North End Boulevard project envisioned in the Next 10 plan. Some of the goals of this project to improve bicycle and pedestrian facilities along this busily traveled roadway, as well as inherit and underneath it all, the safety and operations of the transportation system on this stretch of Roswell Road between Roberts Drive and Dunwoody Place. It adds side paths, sidewalk, buffers, setbacks for pedestrians and bicycles. The landscape median is also an access management tool and provides the inherent safety and associated with the median. Also importantly envisioned in this project is the idea of a signalized intersection, potentially as studied right now and will be studied in this concept development, signalized intersection at North River Parkway and Roswell Road. That signalization will also include alternative access from the non-signalized intersection at Roberts Drive and Roswell as a part of that work. In furtherance of this award, City advertised a request for qualifications on September 27th, 2023. The RFQ followed the Georgia Department of Transportation procurement policy, a new policy for us, but recently implemented with our recent update to local administered project status, and issued a multi-phase advertisement. Phase 1 statement of qualifications were due on October 31st, 2023. Staff received 7 consultant proposals at that time, and statement of qualifications were reviewed by staff. Of those 7, 4 were shortlisted and selected to move on with advance in the procurement process. On December 4th, 2023, the 4 shortlisted consultants were invited to submit a Phase 2 technical approach. The procurement process closed on December 11th, 2023. The consultants submitted included Atkins Realis, Heath and Lineback Engineers, Gresham Smith, and NV5 Engineers and Consultants. A proposal evaluation committee, including Wesley Waters, Alan Johnson, Maggie Grant, and Coseo, evaluated those consultants based on the following criteria: project manager and key team, resources and workload capacity, their technical approach to the project, and past performance on like projects. Based on that evaluation and the scoring system provided, Heath and Lineback scored at the top of the list at 85, NV5 Engineers and Consultants at 72.5, Atkins Realis at 55, and Gresham Smith as well at 55. Based upon that review, staff also requested information and scope and fee proposal from this consultant team of Heath and Lineback. I participated as well in the review and negotiation with Heath and Lineback on their fee proposal based on the work proposed. Based on that review and with the interest in moving this project along now into concept design, staff recommends again that City award this project to Heath and Lineback at $1,149,303.13. Of those funds, there's federal 80% match on this. If you recollect, the city received several months back some $950,000 available to award this project, plus a local match to be provided by our T-SPLOS 2021 program of 20% in association with this. Mayor and Council, with that, any questions?
All right, you've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul,
Dr. Kelly.
I move approval of agenda item 2024-180, approval of a contract award to BCC Engineering doing business as Heath and Lineback Engineers for concept design services for the Roswell Road North End Boulevard project, and to authorize the city manager to execute the contract.
You have a motion by Dr. Kelly. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Dr. Kelly, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve agenda item 2024-180, a contract award to BCC Engineering doing business as Heath and Lineback Engineers for concept design services for the Roswell Road North End Boulevard project. Any discussion? Dr. Kelly.
You may have mentioned this, but there is potentially an open house associated with
There
this
will
exercise?
ultimately be a project information open house associated with this. Yes, ma'am. It would be associated with concept development in a project like this.
So if this is approved tonight, will we expect an open house by by the end of the year, or would that be more of a 2025?
It's probably more of a 2025. I'm not familiar with the schedule as I sit here before you tonight, but it'll take some time for data collection, typically with a project of this size and scale. We're somewhere in the neighborhood of estimated construction delivery cost of somewhere around $17 to $20 million right now. So I would expect sometime in 2025, that open house.
Okay, can I request that the location be within the area of
Absolutely. We'll look for
if
the right
possible,
place to do
yeah.
that up there.
or as close as possible to it. Would you be willing to just briefly give me, like, at a high level, the difference between the scoping work that we did for this, concept design, and then design?
All right. So I can.
Okay.
With the scoping work, this project was not yet on any consideration list with ARC or the Georgia Department of Transportation. It was a project envisioned by the city, defined in the Next 10 program, et cetera. So with the scoping work, one of the primary things we performed with that initial scoping study, using a different consultant, was to perform a series of traffic safety studies and measures that would be used as, I'd call, compelling evidence to the Georgia Department of Transportation to get their support, specifically within their safety program, which is where this project most well fit, so that we could then enter this project into what I'll term the federal process. So the primary purpose behind that scoping study was to better define what the project could do and to perform those safety studies that could help pass the measure with GDOT and their traffic engineers so that we could get that federal fund support from the ARC and from GDOT to further this project along, now at an 80-20 match scenario, at least in the first phase of design. That's where scoping study took us.
Okay. And just to be clear, the federal funds only cover the concept design work?
Correct.
Okay.
So,
And for the design phase of this, you'll do another RFQ, or how?
well, in this case, we've awarded. So what we will do is, unless there's something that indicates that we should go look again for a design consultant, the award can then subsequently be incrementally awarded to, and that's not uncommon with a lot of the other federal projects as well. GDOT does the same. They'll award concept up front, and then as the project advances, and you have better fidelity on what the scope of services is going to be in preliminary design and then final design development, you can more clearly define those costs and negotiate those costs as we go along. And as we go along with ARC as a partner on this, and GDOT, we'll also update the cost for design as we advance the project through the system, much like we've done with other federally funded projects. It's been some years since we've had a project in federal design that we awarded and moved it through. The last one, the one that's now about to enter construction, was the Georgia 400 side path, where we entertained. So this is a fairly new exercise within the last few years for us, given the last project we entertained with federal design dollars on it.
And you said the cost total has just about doubled to $20 million, or nearly?
We're looking at a range of 17 to 20 million. Right
Okay.
now, of course, not knowing full scope, what's
Right.
going to be required. That's what concept should help us do, is better understand that and what the real cost will be then.
Okay, because I think we had 9.6 million
In
listed.
T-Splost, yeah. So it
for
helps,
T-Splost.
that T-Splost helps us leverage,
Okay.
and that's what we're looking to federal support to do here. So I think it could make a good deal for the city here.
Mr. Paulson,
Thank you.
are you finished?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Marty, a couple of things struck me here. Our second place engineering company was scored a 75, which isn't that much different from an 81. So, considering the dollars involved here, did you assess the cost of the second place outfit, and where were they relative to this 1.149?
Not in this process. By virtue of the GDOT procurement policy that we were required to follow for this, this is a qualifications-based selection, and then
So the high score gets it, no matter what the cost is.
well, the high score gets first crack at it, and then we negotiate. So when I talk about that negotiation phase that we went through, we reviewed the detail with the consultant team, which was the number one score, and we confirmed the fidelity of their assessment of the level of service required, the level of effort required, and the cost associated with that effort. So they had first pass at it. We could either accept those costs or move on to number 2 if we could not successfully negotiate with the top scorer in this case. And I paraphrase a little bit, but that's pretty much the procurement policy as we were to follow in this case.
So we really don't have, you're telling me we don't have discretion here? Just because $1.15 million is a lot of money for
Right.
a concept design for 1.5 miles of road, not even 1.5 miles. But this process we followed, we don't have a chance to look at the costs that the second place outfit was going to charge
No,
us.
sir, not by the rules as laid out in the procurement policy. We have the opportunity to validate the reasonableness of the price of number 1 and either take it or move on to number 2.
Okay.
But you do have the opportunity to negotiate those prices more.
Yes, sir. And so we clarified scope along the way. That
Right.
was the important thing out of negotiation.
And you feel comfortable that you have gotten the best value for this project?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
Okay.
And we've had successful work. The Heath and Lineback team designed Georgia Path 400, and they've done a stellar job with that. They've been able to, and part of some of the unknowns is going to be all of the rigors that, although it's 1.5 miles or so, that come along with state review of a federally funded project that they're going to have to withstand as well. All of the additional tests, all the additional scrutinies, structures, analysis, whatever else the case might be that they'll have to undergo here. So there are some uncertainties that they're going to accept some risk here with this as well. So,
All right, well, it's the first time we've ever had one of these that I can recall where 2 scores are relatively close, and we don't even look at the dollars for the second one. But if that's
Yes,
the way it is, that's the way it is.
and that's in order to enjoy the use of the federal dollars.
Enjoy the use. I like the way you said
Yes,
that. That's good. Enjoy the use.
Yes.
All right, question number 2, I guess, comment number 2. There's been a lot of discussion about what the median is going to look like and where there's going to be ability to cross and go south and cut across and go north as you're traveling on Roswell Road. Because of that past discussions we've had about this stretch, as well as the stretch south of here, I would request that the public information open house be scheduled earlier rather than later, so we're not too far down the road
Right.
before we get the public involved. As you recall, some of the discussions up there had to do with accessibility. And, one of the things you're doing is having a signalized intersection up there, which the community wanted, and I get that. But my request is let's move the PIOH earlier rather than later to get community input
And-
as this is developing.
And to that end, I would add, we have had the opportunity, because they were in for the developer on the east side of Roswell Road, we've had that opportunity to discuss what options are available as they've pursued redevelopment of the shopping center to the east of Roswell Road there.
Right.
So we have discussed that. We've discussed strategies and how that might develop as well. So we haven't been isolated from the development activity that might be taking place out there.
And that's fine. I
Yes,
want to make sure the community sees
Absolutely.
what we're planning
Yeah.
before we get so far down the road we can't change it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Mueller?
So, Marty, I think you said in 2025 you were looking at the open house, but just in general, so we're going to spend $1.2 million over.
Right.
How long is that, do you think, for that whole expenditure? Is that like into late 2025 before we actually get the concept design to
I
review?
think by the time we finalize it, we'll probably be beyond the year and a half mark with all of this.
Okay.
There's open house, then there's consolidation of comments, then there's publication of a concept report, et cetera. So there's a lot of formalities to completing a concept report with a project this size for GDOT.
And so just in line with what you just said, I mean, it is a large dollar spend for the concept design. Can you talk a little bit about what's the programmatic controls that you have to make sure in place that we don't get too far along and realize we should have done something else?
Well, I think with the advantage we'll have with this project is that we're going to use and we'll have oversight with GDOT the plan development process. So that's outlined as a requirement in order to take these dollars and step through design on a project like this. Within that, that process has a series of review steps and checks. Okay. Environmental NEPA coordination, for instance, is a heavy component in the early stages of a project like this, in concept development, et cetera. So we'll have a requirement to follow through and meet those milestones. That's always been a pretty good thing, if you could, about GDOT PDP projects, is it's hard to bypass something along the way. There's usually a keeper there somewhere that reminds you that you've got these things to answer along the way.
Yeah, this is a state highway, so GDOT's going to be neck deep in all of this,
yes, sir,
all the way through the process. So you'll have two sets of engineers and eyes watching this whole process.
And we appreciate their support with this. I mean, they've been pretty forthcoming with early dollars to get this going. So, yes, sir.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. Hearing none, you've heard the well, nope, we got a motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-181, consideration to approve an agreement for a grant program and loan agreement with the State Road and Tollway Authority and the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank for the Boylston Drive and Hammond Drive intersection improvement project and streetscape project as a part of the 2024 Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank program, presented by Public Works Director Marty Martin.
Mr. Martin.
All right, Mayor and Council, again, I'll try not to overuse this phrase tonight, but since it's there, in the interest of being able to enjoy the use of Georgia Transportation and Infrastructure Bank funds, I bring before you tonight accept an agreement for a grant and loan with the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank. If you recollect, the City of Sandy Springs submitted an application for these funds for this particular project, that being the Hammond Drive at Boylston intersection project, on January 25th, 2024. At the time, the city requested some $900,000 in grant funds and another $1 million in loan funds, given the fact that the project is very near the ability to go to construction letting, and that is generally a criteria for GTIB grants. On June 6th of 2024, State Road and Tollway Authority awarded the city $650,000 in grant funds and $850,000 in loan funds for the project. Funding amount, although less than what was requested, the city expects to have sufficient funds based on our current available funds within the project budget. Quick discussion on the project. It realigns the intersection of Boylston Drive and Hammond, as well as installs sidewalk and side paths on Boylston to complete the pedestrian network at this location. The project is expected to be advertised for construction later this summer, as I mentioned, and then on with construction. So with that, Mayor and Council staff recommends acceptance of this grant and loan from the State Road and Toll Authority so that we can move forward with those funds in the Boylston and Hammond intersection improvement project.
And I might add that this is some of the toughest money to get because there's not a lot of money in this particular fund.
Yes, sir.
And requires the governor's approval, and we were able to get that. I sent the governor a thank you note for this because there were only just about a dozen projects, I think, or less, that were funded this year, and we were one of the few in an urban area. So,
yes, sir. Mayor, I'd like to, although she's moved on to another opportunity elsewhere, our senior transportation planner, Caitlin Schenkel, very astutely recognized the criteria and the rules of engagement for this program and authored a pretty compelling grant and loan application in this case to get us this far.
Well, I was pleasantly surprised when I got the notice from the governor that we had been chosen. So good work for whoever, Caitlin and everybody else who was involved in it. All right, you've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Mueller.
I move that we approve Agenda Item 2024-181 for the approval of an agreement for a grant program and a loan agreement with the State Road and Tollway Authority and the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank for the Boylston Drive and Hammond Drive intersection improvements and streetscape project as part of the 2024 Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank program.
A motion by Ms. Mueller. Is there a second? Been motion by Ms. Mueller, seconded by Ms. Rochelle. that we approve agenda item 2024-181, an agreement for grant program and loan agreement with the State Road and Tollway Authority and the Georgia Infrastructure or Transportation Infrastructure Bank for Boylston Drive and Hammond Drive. Any discussion? Ms. Mueller.
I'm sorry. So, Marty, I know that, so it looks like we were short from our ask, which sounds like this was somewhat special that we got it, right? $500,000. And so is that coming from the general project, the budget for this particular project, or is it coming from some other project that will have to be moved in here?
So what I hope is ultimately we free up some T-SPLOST dollars as well with this, but we do have CIE program as well dollars that are programmed against this. This is one of the more eligible projects for that program. So we believe right now that we've got adequate funds within the capital budget as aligned right now to support this project. And hopefully at the end of the drill, we did have some T-SPLOST funds programmed against us. We should be able to free up the lion's share of those funds for use in other elements of the T-SPLOST program.
Okay. And then I don't know if this is really a Marty question or a Tony Carlisle question. So the loan repayment is over 5 years, and when we do our budget process for the fiscal year, do we forecast that into the budget?
That is a Tony question. So.
Yes, we do.
Okay. And then the second part then would be, since I think the project, was it the one before it had, no, they didn't have GTIB. But do we keep track of the summary fund of how much GTIB we have and, they go for how many years? And then what is that balance?
I don't know the balance from the top of my head, but we can provide that to you. But we do keep up with what we have borrowed and what we owe at this point.
Okay.
So,
I guess that's a way.
So is your question how much money we've had available to us from GTIB over the course of the program?
I was just curious,
Right.
What that balance is.
I can't give you the exact number. I can tell you that we've received GTIB funding for 3 projects. This would be the third of those. So the first of those projects was the Roswell Road at Windsor intersection project, the Gateway project to the south end of Roswell Road. The second project, the construction of Denmark Drive from Roswell Road to Boylston, and then now this project. In the case of the first 2 projects, though we were awarded loan in one of those cases, I believe it was Roswell at Windsor, the city never exercised the use of the loan component. We only used the grant. So in this case, this will be the first time we expect to use both grant and loan on one of the GTIB projects.
Good to know.
Any other discussion? Mr. Rochelle.
This is a great and well-needed project. I'm curious, are we studying the Hammond Drive Roswell Road intersection?
We have. And so as you're aware, Hammond at Roswell Road is a part of a future phase of the Hammond Drive corridor improvements.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, we have funded what we'll call Phase 1 from effectively Boylston to Glen Ridge. As an interim measure, we've also performed studies using the consultant team that's working on Hammond Drive Phase 1 right now to look at what interim traffic changes we may need to execute once that Hammond Drive widening Phase 1 project is implemented. So it would glue into this intersection project, but probably more appropriately, and it's a restriping exercise currently is what we've got envisioned. Much like we did with restriping exercise when we implemented City Springs here, yet we still had not executed the roadway improvements on Sandy Springs Circle. We went through a striping exercise there to reallocate lanes to better manage turn movements there. So that's what we've got envisioned for Roswell Road to Boylston as an interim condition until we ultimately get to that next phase of construction and full implementation there.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-181, approving an agreement for the grant program and loan agreement with the State Road and Tollway Authority and the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank for the Boylston Drive, Hammond Drive intersection improvement. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda Agenda item number 2024-182, consideration to declare as surplus certain property owned by the city and directing disposal of the same. This is presented by Chief Financial Officer Tony Carlisle.
Ms. Carlisle.
Mayor and council, this request is seeking your approval to declare certain city property as surplus. The city's fleet and police department has property which is outside of the service date and no longer of valid use for the productivity of the business of the city. The exhibits provided list all equipment for consideration of categorizing as surplus. The purchasing policy and code of ordinance directs our purchasing team to dispose of these items under the supervision of the city manager in the most advantageous manner. Choosing to move forward allows the purchasing team to make items available for sale, donation, or disposal. We're seeking approval of classifying these items as surplus.
All right, you've heard the report of the Chief Financial Officer. What's the desire of council? Ms. Rochelle.
I move that we approve agenda item 2024-182, consideration to declare as surplus certain property owned by the city and directing disposal of the same.
Have a motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second? Moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve agenda item 2024-182, a motion to declare as surplus certain property owned by the city and directing disposal of the same. Any discussion? Mr. Paulson.
If I may. Tony, do you have the spreadsheet that has all these things listed on it?
Yes.
If you go to the bottom of that sheet, have you got it? Can you show it on the screen here?
She's showing it.
Yeah, the bottom. Which one was it? Oh, go down to the car one. Is this it? Because there was one of these that had
For the police
vehicles on it.
department, it's the police department
Yeah.
exhibit.
And the reason I'm asking is one of the cars had like 26,000 miles on it. And I was surprised we were making that surplus. And I was just curious. I don't want to hold this up, but this is not the car one. No, the next agenda item, I think that's one vehicle. Yes, sir.
I'm familiar with that vehicle. That's a totaled out vehicle.
Oh, it was totaled?
Yes.
Okay.
Totaled out, bent frame, and we've taken parts off of it. So.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
We've had other people buy a number of police cars for us this year because they hit them. So they have been buying us new vehicles to replace the ones they damaged severely in some cases. So that's this. You may see several of these coming along. All right. Any other discussion? All right. Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2024-182, a declaration of surplus certain property owned by the city and directing disposal of the same. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. Moving to the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-183. This is consideration to authorize the donation of a surplus vehicle to the Cherokee, North Carolina Sheriff's Office, presented by SSPD Captain Andrew Spears.
Captain Spears.
Mayor, Council, good evening. Thank you for having me up here tonight. Before you is a request for a donation to the Cherokee County, North Carolina Sheriff's Office for a vehicle that we've identified as surplus. Vehicle's well past its life, has 115-some thousand miles on it, and Cherokee, North Carolina Sheriff's Office is a little bit financially challenged, and they would willingly accept this vehicle if we were to donate it to them.
All right. You've heard the report of the captain. What's the desire of council? Mr. Paulson.
I move approval of agenda item 2024-183, authorized donation of the surplus vehicle to the Cherokee County, North Carolina Sheriff's Office.
Motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we approve agenda item 2024-183, authorizing the donation of a surplus vehicle to the Cherokee County, North Carolina Sheriff's Office. Any discussion? Mr. DiGiulio. It's a Ford F-350 Super Duty truck.
Yes, sir. 2011 model. It was one of our old, like the Hero trucks that we operate. It was our first one. So, what is that, about 13 years old?
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2024-183, authorizing the donation of a surplus vehicle to the Cherokee County, North Carolina Sheriff's Office. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. That brings us to the council and mayor and council reports. A few things have been going on. We participated in the topping out of the new police headquarters and court system this week. Is a very big milestone for us this week. Glad that we were able to get that process done and hope to be able to move in April of next year. So we're now focusing toward the interior, and some more stuff on the outside, clearly. Those of you who haven't had the opportunity yet to see Jersey Boys in the main theater, it is phenomenal. I've seen it at the Fox. I've listened to the original cast out on Broadway. This is as good or better than either of those, so it's phenomenal. Hope everybody makes an effort. Sunday night at the Heritage Lawn, another great concert. That place, I mean, they were dancing all over the place, so it was great. Stars and Strikes was great. Largest crowd we've ever had, estimated at 10,000 people. And it was really just, again, to the staff and everybody else, fire department, police, everybody who has to work overtime to get that thing done. It's just an amazing evening for this community, and I appreciate all the work that goes into it. Again, we also participated in the opening of Fire Station number 5 out in District 1. Mr. Paulson spent a lot of time trying to get that opened, and we're finally glad that we were able to do that. And then we were all at the Georgia Municipal Association convention in Savannah. It's our last meeting, and I was honored to be named the chairman of the Transportation Committee for GMA for the next 2 years, and it's a real honor to be able to take on particularly something that, as we spent a lot of time talking about tonight, policy-wise is so important to our community, so I was glad to do that. In January or sometime last year, I got an email from a mother who had a special needs child and who'd been using our special needs swing at the Morgan Falls Park. And for safety reasons, we took it down because it just didn't meet the standards. And she sent me a note asking, hey, what can we do to get that restored? Because her young son, really, that was the highlight of his life. He had special needs, and that was one of the few things that really brought him joy. And so we worked with the Parks and Rec staff, and it took a long time to find one that would fit. That had the requirements for safety and everything else. And after several months, the staff found it. We installed it. The mother sent me the most amazing congratulatory note that I think I've ever gotten. Well, I got a note this week from a friend of the family, and the young boy's name was Michael, 4 years old, and he died on July 6th. Sometimes we think even the little things that we do don't really matter that much. But that was a little thing in the overall scope of what we do as a body and as a city. But to that one child, that meant a lot. And I was heartbroken to learn that Michael died. But I was also gratified to know that we had a small part, maybe in his life, a big part, in bringing him joy and happiness and some meaning to his unfortunately short life. So I want to just let you know these are the little things that happen sometimes that we don't pay much attention to that really matter to our residents, and it was just very gratifying for me to be able to participate in that, but heartbreaking to learn that he had died this week. So I just wanted to kind of let council know these things really do matter. The things we do up here really have an impact on people's lives, sometimes in ways that we don't even begin to imagine. So that's it for me. Anybody else? Mr. Paulson? Well, yeah, we can talk about that in just a second.
I was just going to talk about that.
All right.
Talk about
I would leave something for everybody else to talk about.
No. So, Mayor, we're going to meet in 2 weeks, which also happens to be August 6th, which is also National Night Out. And it's better to announce it today rather than wait till August 6th and tell everybody. This is a fantastic evening out at City Green. It's also there's a school program that goes along with that. I can't remember the details of it, but it's typically well represented by police, by fire, by DEA, by chief. I don't know who else is coming to this thing on August 6th. And the most important question, are we going to have a helicopter this year? It's even better. So anyway, advance notice, August 6th will be fun.
And John, remember, we start our meeting at 5 o'clock that
Yeah.
night rather than 6 o'clock.
So we can actually go out there.
So it means everybody, well, I guess only very few people are here, but
They're streaming. They're streaming. They know. It's very important. Yeah. And I have a 3-year-old who's already dressed for the occasion. He's got, unfortunately, Chief, he didn't have his police department, but he's got his fire gear and ready to be here. It's his grandmother's fault. She's the one who bought, but he's already wearing it, and it's on his calendar. Because you learn as a grandparent, you get new generations of stuff. My kids grew up with Barney the Purple Dinosaur. My grandchildren are Big Bluey and Paw Patrol. And he is determined to be in a Marshall truck, in a chase truck, and in a Sky helicopter when he comes. So we better have all 3 of those because his grandfather has promised him that he's going to be able to access those. So just to give you a heads up. Just to give you a heads up. All right? Anything else, anybody? All right, Dr. Kelly.
Actually, had almost forgot. So our last meeting was June 18th, so you already know what I got to do right quick. So we've had Juneteenth, and it went well. But I'll just read this. We did receive a note from Senator Warnock, but this is not what I'm about to read. What I'm going to read is a note that was sent to myself, and they mentioned Mayor Paul and the council. So it says, I wanted to personally thank you, Mayor Paul, and the council, and the entire team 1,000,000 times for an outstanding Juneteenth celebration. You nailed it in every imaginable way, from taking us back to our roots through education and celebration, to providing activities to engage our youth of all ages and opportunities for Black-owned businesses to thrive on the city lawn. Loved it. Thank you for collaborating and inviting surrounding cities in North Atlanta to take part in this wonderful recognition of Black American history. I was awed by the performance of song, dance, art, and creativity abound, presented in a manner to inspire the audience to seek and do more to embrace our history. The activities outside were equally as riveting. To see people of all races, ages, backgrounds, and ethnicities celebrate the Juneteenth holiday with love, appreciation, and value. To see history unfold as Mrs. Shirley Pruitt from DeWalt's Alley speak to the audience, I nearly cried. On this day, I could not have been more proud to be a Black woman in America, especially one who has resided in North Atlanta all of her life. Thank you for bringing a welcome show of Black American history and DEI to this side of the ATL. I sincerely appreciate all of the efforts you and your team put forth in making the event a meaningful celebration of freedom. So I just wanted to read that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly, and for all the work that you and your team put into it. I couldn't agree more with the sentiment that you just expressed from the participant. So thank you. Anybody else? All right, Ms. Carlisle, the unaudited financials from May.
Yes, sir. The May 2024 unaudited financials results are as follows. We're in the 11th month of the fiscal year and 91.67% of the budget year. Revenues are at 108.42%, and expenditures are at 85.60% of the budget. The overall departmental expenditures are trending between 35 and 89% and are being managed as expected as we near the end of this fiscal year and prepare for the annual audit.
All right, thank you. Any questions about the financials? All right, thank you, Ms. Carlisle. We do need an executive session tonight for the purpose of real estate and litigation, so I'll entertain a motion to suspend regular order and go into executive session.
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
I move that we suspend regular order and move into executive session for the purposes of real estate and litigation.
Is there a second? Moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we suspend regular order and move into executive session for the purposes of real estate and litigation. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on the suspension of regular order and going to executive session. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are in executive session. And we will conduct no further business tonight. We shall simply return from the executive session, reconvene into regular order, and then immediately adjourn. Thank you. In favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All right, Mr. DiGiulio.
Move adjournment.
Mr. DiGiulio moves adjournment. Is there a second? Mr. Paulson moves adjournment. Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Mr. Paulson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, no. We are adjourned at 9:37.
Where are you going on your cruise?
Starting Budapest, John Glombo's hometown, and we go up the Danube to Vienna.